Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! I have for you today a sketch card. This is an idea I got from another demonstrator. She is Stampin' Pretty, and I took a sketch that she had done and figured out my own measurements and tweaked it a little bit and created a very simple card that could be used for any occasion. It's great for using up scraps of designer series paper, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to make it. So this features some of our designer series paper in the annual catalog. It is the Delightfully Eclectic set. It's a great pack of paper because it has 48 sheets of paper in it. It's 12 designs that are double-sided, so it's a whole lot of paper, and I just decided I was going to make use of it. I've been dying to use these swans on a card and finally figured out how to do it. So let's get started and I'll show you how. So to start with, I'm going to use a card base. This is Calypso Coral, and yes, that's right, Calypso Coral. I've got my colors all mixed up in my brain. This is 8.5 by 5.5, scored down the middle at 4 1/4, but you can use the other style card base if that's what you prefer. No rhyme or reason to the card base size for this particular card. So I always check and make sure I know my front and my back. To the front of the card, I'm going to add a strip of cardstock. I'm using basic black here. This is 3 inches by 4 1/4. No special adhesive needed for this card. Whatever your adhesive of choice is just fine. I have some Stampin' Seal here. I just opened a new refill, so it's a little persnickety yet, as my adhesive usually is on camera. And I'm just going to center this in the middle of the card, and then we're on to the next step. So next we have our designer series paper. I am making this the focal point of the card, and this piece of designer series paper is 3.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches tall. One idea I had with this, you can always, as with any sketch card, change dimensions if you like. And on some of the other samples that I'm going to show you in a bit, I framed the designer series paper just a little bit with another piece of cardstock just to change the look. And that's one thing you can do to change the look of your card. You could also make this piece smaller and then frame it as well. All right, so we are rolling right along here. Next up, I wanted to add some texture. So I took a piece of Calypso Coral cardstock. This is 1.5 inches tall by 4 inches wide. And I went ahead and ran it through an embossing folder. I used one of the Basics 3D embossing folders that you can find online at my website. It is a pack of embossing folders included in our online exclusives. So you have to go to the website to check them out. One of them is this lovely crosshatch design is what I call it, but there are 2 others in the set as well. Very handy to have if you've got an embossing machine. And so I went ahead and ran that through. Before I put this on the card, I'm going to add another strip of cardstock to it. This one is 3/4 of an inch tall by 3 1/4 inches long. And for these next couple of pieces, specifically the white that I used for my sentiment and this black strip, I purposely cut them to the size that I needed them. So I started with this piece of paper that perfectly fit my stamp, and then I decided how long that I wanted this black piece of cardstock to be. You can tweak that. I'm going to show you another way to kind of switch it around in my samples in just a minute, but you can play with that. You're not tied in to this particular length and then this particular size for your sentiment because it might not fit the stamps you have at home. So go ahead and play with that. You can experiment, and that's kind of why I like these sketch cards, because they are springboards for you with your own creativity. So this just gets layered right on top. If you wanted, you could even wait. You could glue these together first and then run them through the embossing folder so they both have texture. That would be another option for you. So next up, I'm going to add some twine. So I have this is actually Flirty Flamingo twine from our new annual catalog that's coming out, or not annual catalog, Spring Mini, that's coming out the first of the year. And even though it's not the exact shade, it's Flirty Flamingo instead of Calypso Coral, they're so close you can't tell between the twine and the cardstock, so I'm using that. And one of my little tricks that I like to use when I add twine to cards is I like to, instead of gluing the ends down, I like to anchor it with a piece of tape. Nobody's gonna know it's back here. And I find it easier than trying to secure it with a glue dot or make sure it sticks to whatever adhesive I'm using. I'm going to wind this around about 3 times. You could do it once, you could do it 5 times, whatever suits. You can make it kind of twisted and look messy, or you can lay it flat like I prefer here. Not too tight though, because you don't want your cardstock to bow up. And then I'm just going to secure the other end with another piece of tape before I trim that edge piece. So there we go, cute little added texture. Now I'm going to put some dimensionals on the back. I'm going to put one on each of the 4 corners. And then since this is almost as wide as the card front, I'm gonna add one more to the middle, but I'm gonna put it just above or below the twine. I don't like to put it right on top so that it doesn't give it a little more height there in the middle as opposed to on the ends. And then this panel gets added right to the front of the card. I'm going to maneuver it so I don't cut any of the heads off my swans. Now you can add as much dimension to your card as you want. So if you want to use more dimensionals and lift up your designer series paper before you do anything else, go ahead and do that. I just chose to keep everything flat until I got to this piece here. All right, before we finish up with the twine, we're gonna go ahead and do our stamping. So to start, I have the piece for my sentiment, and as I said, I sized this deliberately to the stamp. So this one is 1 1/4 inches tall by 2 inches wide, and it's exactly the size that I need to nicely fit my stamp. This is a sneak peek at a stamp from the Perennial Postage Set, which is coming in that spring mini I mentioned. If you are like me and you love having paper catalogs in your hands, feel free to get in touch with me, and if you don't have a demonstrator you're currently working with, I'd be happy to get a catalog into your hands. So I'm just going to ink this up with some Tuxedo Black Memento ink. This is my black ink of choice. And there we go. See, nicely frames my sentiment. I'm going to set this to the side for just a minute while I'm here and go ahead and stamp the insert for my card. So this is a piece of basic white that is 5 1/4 by 4. And I am using the Happy Anniversary sentiment from our Ringed with Nature set. And this one is photopolymer. So since I have it handy, I'm going to grab my Stampin' Pierce mat. This is just a nice thick piece of foam to give me a little extra cushion since there is not one already built in. Gives me a nice impression with that stamp. And then for a little accent, I have Calypso Coral ink, and this little heart accent stamp is also from the Ringed with Nature set. It is one of my favorites. It's a great little stamp if you've got a love card, an anniversary card, a wedding card. I'm going to put this on the insert here like you see, and then I'm also going to grab my envelope and put that same stamp on the envelope so it coordinates. It's always nice to get a cute little envelope in the mail and not a boring envelope. Boring envelopes usually have bills in them. You know there wasn't a bill in there. Okay, so my envelope is done. My insert's done. I'm going to let them sit for just a minute. I'm going to grab my sentiment here, and this time I'm opting for mini dimensionals because it's a smaller panel and I don't want those dimensionals hanging up on the twine again, like I did with that first piece. So I could put one in the middle, but I don't think I need it since this is a smaller panel. So once my backings are peeled off here, I'm just going to center this and give that a nice little press. To finish off my twine, I said we were going to get back to it. I have, I'm going to make a double bow. So to do that, I'm just going to fold over a short length of my twine and just tie a bow, and it's double because I've got a double length of the twine. I prefer double bows to single bows with baker's twine. I think they're easier, at least they are for me. And some days I can tie them really well. Some days I struggle a little bit. But there, I've got a cute little bow all ready to go. And it just gives it that extra layer, just gives it a little something. Now I'm going to grab a glue dot. And I bring my bow right to the glue dot and give it a little press. And then I can lift the whole thing up and pop it right on the card where I want it. There we go. Now to finish the front, I'm going to put a little bit of bling on the card. These are our iridescent pastel gems. And for the first sample I showed you, I used the lighter colored. I think I'm going to use some of the darker color here, because I think it'll still coordinate. Obviously, you don't have to add bling to your card if you don't think you need it. But I thought it would be a little fun here to add just a little bit of sparkle. Like so. And then to finish it off, all I need to do is glue my insert in now that the ink has dried. And my card is ready to go. So you can see it is really quick and easy. Once you pick out your paper and figure out what layers you want as far as cardstock and paper, you can put together a beautiful card really simply. This would be great for any occasion. I needed to fill a hole in my stash. I needed some anniversary cards, as you can see, and I also needed some masculine birthday cards, so I'm going to show you a couple of those in just a second here too. So one thing you can do is you can change up your card just by changing the color of the cardstock you use. So I kept the same paper, but I changed to Coastal Cabana. Do you see why I got my colors mixed up earlier and thought I said it wrong? Calypso Coral, Coastal Cabana. I was in the seas. So just as beautiful, fun pop of color. This twine gave me a fit. That's what I was talking about earlier with those double bows. Whew. That was a struggle. But I just changed up the color of the bling, but otherwise the card is the same and equally lovely. So that was fun. And you can even mix and match your colors. Here I left the bow off, but I kept everything else the same and just added both colors, the Calypso Coral here with the Coastal Cabana base. Now these next few cards, I have to laugh at myself because I made a big old mistake. I had in my head I was going to make a card using Designer Series paper as the base, but I didn't really think I could change the orientation on the card, because if you turn it sideways, these pieces, I don't like that narrow look. I probably could have made it work, but I thought, no, I'm gonna keep the cards like this today. And then I went and cut my paper wrong. So these next few cards were my way of making this work, even though it was not at all what I intended. So here we go. I just want you to see side by side how I kind of used the same elements and rearranged them a little bit. So my card base is the Designer Series paper, so it's got a nice pleasant surprise inside. And then I really just finagled with scraps of paper. This piece here is the same. I obviously cut it differently once I realized the mistake that I had made. And then I added one more layer here, used a punch. And then here is another one that's a little bit simpler. So you can see I still made it work. You might just have to get a little more creative, but you can actually change the orientation on this card. And I had an extra piece of the Designer Series paper left over, so I created this one using cardstock that I embossed. I actually layered these two pieces together before I ran it through the embossing machine. And then I skipped the base layer of cardstock and used more Designer Series paper since I had a strip laying on the table, a punch, and a little bling. And there we go, another anniversary card. So not all disasters can be come back from, but this one I actually happened to make it work. I just got a good chuckle out of that. All right, so here are the masculine birthday cards that I created. So I'm going to show you these side by side. They're virtually the same. You can change up the height on the strip that you use behind your Designer Series paper. Here I went with the 3 inches. This one's a bit skinnier. I didn't like how the paper looked when I just laid it on the card, so I backed this with some Night of Navy, just gave it a little bit of a frame, but I didn't want too much of a border. And then you can see how different the cards look just by changing colors of the cardstock. And again, I mentioned you can switch some of the elements around. Here I used the thin strip on top with my sentiment and used the larger piece behind, as opposed to this first card where it was opposite. So just another thought for you. A little bit of manly bling on these since these are more masculine cards. My simple happy birthday message inside, and I think they'll still make someone happy. And again, this is just for you to kind of get ideas and run with and make them as creative as you want. You can really bare bones this one though. For example, this one I put together in less than 5 minutes. It is a piece of cardstock. I use DSP for the strip behind the focal point. Here's the focal point DSP, a punch, a stamp, a little bling, and there's my card front. Super simple. I just need to finish the inside. And what I think I might do is I might make some more of these, but I'm going to take this slightly smaller, I think, and give it a black border. I think that'll just make it pop a little more. But really, you can't get much simpler than this when you're making cards. 2 pieces of designer series paper, piece of cardstock, a punch, and a stamp. Easy peasy. Well, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you tuning into this video, and I hope you liked our sketch card technique. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You can click the notification bell and you'll get a little ding every time I post another video here on the page. You can also check me out on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper. I'd love to see you there. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.